Hello friends and internet acquaintances. My name is Rachel Giannis Middle. Gilbert and Sullivan is my middle name, and my middle name is my last name. And I am here to explore the magic of the Gilbert and Sullivan operas by very pedantically ranking every element of them. Yesterday I washed my hair, and I happened to see this TikTok video of this person putting curl cream in their hair when it was wet and doing this scrunching technique to get proper curls. And then she dried it with a diffuser, but I don't have a diffuser. I don't even know where my hairdryer is, and I hate to put heat on my hair. So I've just been scrunching it for the last day, basically, because I have so much hair and it takes ages to dry. And when I was getting ready to do this video, I finally kind of took it down because I'd had it in a big mess, and I realised, you know what, it was actually still a tiny bit wet, so I put it up again thinking I'll take it down later to do the video. But then when I was doing my makeup, my housemate came into my room and she goes, "Oh wow, you look amazing," and I was like, actually this is kind of fierce. So my hair's currently just scrunched in order to release curls later, but I think it's kind of quite cool. And you know, I accessorised with some bits and pieces, and it's actually become quite a relevant hairstyle for what we're discussing today, which is the Mezzo Arias. Just before I get started, there are a few things that I want to point out to everyone. First of all is the roaring success of our production of Students of Penzance that happened in Bristol with the wonderful genius writer Sarah Nash. If you would be interested in finding out more about this production, or maybe even putting it on yourself, just let me know and I'll pass your details on to Sarah. But it was an amazing show. I am always suspicious about GNS parodies and tend to err on the side of assuming that they're going to be not so well written, but as soon as I saw this one, I was like, this is something really, truly special. And we had a full house. It was about 60 people. And honestly, there were people laughing, properly laughing out loud all the way through. It was one of the most fun evenings I've had in a really long time. The other thing that I want to point out to everyone is that Forbear Theatre are doing the Gondoliers at Hever Castle on May the 28th. That's the Sunday, 8 p.m, May the 28th. I've put a link in the description below where you can buy tickets for that, or if you have any questions about that, just let me know. I'm going to release more information over the coming weeks about the cast of that. We got a slightly different cast from when we did it the time before in the summer, and we've only got a piano, not a full orchestra, but I have certainly grown as a director since then. I've grown as a performer since then. I think even if you saw the Gondoliers even if you saw this production in the summer, you're going to want to see it again if you're close by. So do get your tickets for that nice and early. I've no idea how many seats they've got on that theatre. I'm going to have a visit to the venue next week, so I'll be able to furnish you with more details then. But it should be a really, really great show. I'm really excited about it. It's so fun to do a festival that's not the Gilbert and Sullivan Festival. As great as the Gilbert and Sullivan Festival is, it is nice to do something else. But if you have seen us and you want to hire us, or if you just want to donate to us, that would be amazing. We're going to set up a whole Friends of Forbear scheme very shortly, but you can already donate to us, either a monthly or one-off donation, so I'll also put that link in the description. So, now that's all out of the way, I'm going to talk about the parameters for this video. So, as I mentioned in a Facebook comment, actually, none of these lists are final. So don't think that I've decided and they're not going to change. Of course they're going to change. I already think, for example, that I put Aline too low in the soprano list. I think If You Go In from IOLANTHE was far too high on the trio list. There are definitely things that I'm gonna fiddle with and change, and I think it's all to do with finding the right parameters. So I have tried something a bit new for this one. This was in direct response to the fact that I Built Upon a Rock and In Bygone Days all did pretty badly in the soprano video, but I couldn't think of a way of ranking things without including a comedy category, because for me, comedy is so important. So I'll tell you what I have done to see if I can solve that problem. So for this, music gets a mark out of 20. As usual, lyrics also get a mark out of 20. I think that I should probably give lyrics just as much weight as music, as long as it's understood that within the lyric category, I'm including just the quality of how the words flow, but also how relevant the lyrics are to either what's going on or the characters. So the meaning of the lyrics and just the aesthetic beauty poetry quality of them. I think in the past I've only really been thinking about beauty poetry, but now I'm thinking about probably a bit more than that. Now, I have this combined category of emotional / comedic stakes, and that is out of 20. And I have made this kind of silent deal with myself that if something is only comedic or only emotional, it can only get a maximum of like 17, 18. So I Built Upon a Rock, yeah, that would get an 18. But something like So Ends My Dream would have got a 20, because to me that has the best of both worlds. So, but I think in that respect, that's a really good thing, because then I Built Upon a Rock probably still wouldn't have come quite as high as that song, but it certainly would have gained about 6 marks from there not being a separate comedic category. Because I do totally agree with everyone who commented that it's really bad if I've got a system where these purely emotional numbers are just automatically doing worse than those that have comedy in. So I hear you, and that is going to change. Narrative / character importance, I've given a 10 to. Then I've given a mark out of 10 for enjoyment. And actually all of these songs have done pretty well for enjoyment. But with that in mind, let's get started. Number 8 is Little Maid of Arcadee from THESPIS, which maybe goes a little bit higher in a couple of places, but to me it does sound like a mezzo aria. I have, my opinion is backed up by 2 very competent authorities on this, so I'm going to go with it. Little Maid of Arcadee, I'm sad that it didn't do better than it did. So these pieces have all got a mark out of 80, and this got 51. So that is not a bad score. Considering that often things from THESPIS have got below half marks, this one I really do absolutely love. I think this is a cracking song. I gave this an 18 out of 20 for music. I love the fact that every verse is slightly different. That's what Will is always saying to me, how the sign of a good musical piece is one where the verses slightly vary. But also just the key changes in the verse. There's something really... And this is going to sound so silly, but there's something about them which is so vibrant in a narrative way. It makes you go, ooh. Do you know what I mean? Little Maid of Arcadee sat on Cousin Robin's knee, thought in form... I just love that G sharp. Thought in form and face and limb, nobody could rival him. He was brave and she was fair. I love that. Truth they made a pretty pair, happy little maiden she, happy maid of Arcadee, happy little maiden she, happy maid of Arcadee, happy maid of Arcadee. I just think this is so utterly charming. Weary of his lover's play, jilted her and went. Listen to the anxiety in that, but it's so beautiful. Wretched little maiden she, wretched maid of Arcadee, wretched maid of Arcadee. To her little home she cried. It's so dynamic, this. It's so vibrant. I think the music in this is so great, and I think that this is such a good sign that the music in THESPIS was really good, because this is just, like, it doesn't, weirdly, like, I know it's odd of me to give such a high musical mark to something which is so simple, but I don't know, there's something really magical about this number to me. Cousin Richard came to woo. I just love that key change. There's something that just gives me a rush of dopamine or serotonin or whichever the correct chemical is. Lyrics. I gave this one a 14 out of 20. The lyrics flow very nicely and they tell a very nice story, but I'm just aware that they're relatively simple, so I probably wouldn't give like the poetry side more than a 7. And then I would also have to give kind of a 7 to how meaningful it is in the context of the story. I know that kind of somewhat comes into narrative importance as well, but I do think that I'm starting to include this feeling in the lyric category as well, like how much I feel these lyrics have meaning in the context of what we're talking about. And we don't know who this person Sparkian's singing about is. So I'm just aware that this is not a real person, or if it is, there's no stakes surrounding her. And it's a pretty story, and it's a lovely story out of context. I mean, out of context, it's probably one of GNS's best songs. I mean, maybe that's a terribly sweeping statement. But you don't need, like, any context for this song at all. You can just have this totally out of context, but because of that, just within the opera itself, it doesn't feel terribly meaningful. I only gave it an 8 out of 20 for emotional comedic stakes. I mean, it's kind of funny in a weird sexist way. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess she is sad and then she meets someone and no, it's okay. Like, it's not really funny. And I suppose Sparkian could maybe make an emotional, but because the point he's making is that, oh, this girl who likes me, she'll get over it, it's in his interest not to really get too emotional about it. So maybe in a different context, if this song was really about somebody very real who had been very sad at unrequited love, and you'd perform it out of context in that way, it might be way more emotional. But just in the context of the opera, I can't give it any more than that. I think even an 8 was generous. I gave it a 2 for narrative/character importance. Again, it's just a pretty song, but it has nothing to do with the show. You could cut this song and nothing would change. Sparkian says to Sullivan, oh, Daphne will be okay. Did you ever hear about the girl who loved Cousin Robin? No, then I'll sing about it to you. You know, it's just, Sullivan gets sung out a lot. And I do give it like a couple of points just for the fact that, oh, it's quite funny that he's included that line, you don't know that? Then I'll sing it to you. A la Magdalene Churn, you know, I like that. And I gave this a 9 out of 10 for enjoyment. As an audience member, I dig this song, and as a person who just tried to sing it without an accompaniment, I enjoyed it even without the accompaniment. I think it is so nice, and yeah, I just love this number, and I gave it a 51 out of 80, so I think it's quite a high-scoring song considering it has like 0 narrative or emotional importance. So really well done, Little Maid of Arcadee. I'm sorry you couldn't come higher, but there will be a place where this song is perfect. Like, I think people use it for singing exams. When I was looking on YouTube, I found a lot of the entries were people using it for singing exams, and I'm just all for this song being used as much as possible. I think it is so charming and lovely, and a perfect example of Sullivan's excellent word painting. Number 7, I have given to Dear Friends, Take Pity on My Lot from The Sorcerer. Now, this is a song that is very special to me because I played Constance in 2012 with Savoynet, and I had a really lovely time. In fact, along with Phyllis, which I played at the same festival, those are my first 2 kind of big principal parts on the stage. So I was really excited in doing this song, and I really think that I hit upon something which I'd not seen too many people do before, which was that I really showed that I was not happy about this new development. So I recognised that this was a plain old man, because lyrically she's meant to understand that. She's not really happy about this situation, but she just can't stay away from him. It's like this magnetic attraction. And so Constance is quite aware that something has happened, that she's been brainwashed. And I found that gave the song like a bit of an extra dimension. But it's still lovely just being performed in the very classic way, which is, oh, she comes on, she's very happy about it, whatever. You know, it's every performer's different, every director's different. I think there are 100 ways of doing this song. But I really do love it. I only gave it a 12 for music out of 20 because I honestly don't think it is one of the most musically advanced numbers in the canon. It reminds me a bit of that, of why I gave If Somebody Their Chance to Be quite a low mark, because it just sounds, it's just like a very simple it's that they're quite similar to me in their simplicity, and yeah, fine, they're comedic songs rather than songs that are meant to be beautiful musically, but yeah, it doesn't get a high mark for that. But I did give it a 15 for lyrics. I do think the lyrics are useful because they very much fit the situation and the character, but I also recognise the poetry isn't beautiful. Oh, you very, very plain old man I love you madly. You very plain old man, I love you madly. Oh, well, you very deaf old man, I love you dearly. Maybe those two are switched. I don't remember offhand. I gave this one a 16 for emotional / dramatic stakes. I think there is a way of actually making this hugely emotional. Can you imagine playing this where Constance is actually quite upset about this and she can't stay away from this man? And maybe when she mentions Dr. Daly, he's actually there and hears it. That might solve that problem of Constance and him never having a resolution at the end of the show. Maybe if he's there for that moment. Just a thought. But I think this song is a big moment. It's not very dramatic in terms of its like true show-stopping, punching you in the face with music quality, but it is definitely a number that people really love. They sit up in their seats, they want to hear how good this number's going to be. And I think it does have the potential to be emotional, even if you don't often see it played like that. But just in terms of the sheer stuff you can do with this song as an actor, I have given it quite a high dramatic mark. You can be very over the top with this song, and I appreciate that. It is also just very funny. This can be the funniest song in the show, maybe the funniest song in several shows, but just because it's not terribly emotional, I can only give it a 16. And because the comedy is so dependent on it being played in a way that isn't super cringe, like I have definitely seen this done in a way that actually made me quite uncomfortable. So I'm just giving it a 16 rather than an 18, like maxing out on its comedy score, because I appreciate that people do have to put a little bit of thought in this to make it not gross. I gave it a 5 for its narrative / character importance. Yeah, it's good that we are seeing a character who has previously been highlighted suffer from this love curse / spell that Alexis has distributed throughout the village. So it's good that we are seeing that narratively. It's nice to see an example of that after the chorus have shown us, then we see it happen to a particular person who we know about. So yeah, it does have narrative importance, but when it comes to Constance as a character, it's like, oh, okay. Like the fact that this has happened to her is just so arbitrary. Like it could have been any person, and it's never referred to again, and that irritates me. I mean, I know I've talked at length before about how the mistreatment of Constance like really affects me, and it makes me so cross, because to me it's just Gilbert just totally dropping the ball. Maybe he did have early drafts where something happened, but I don't like the fact that this could be about anyone. And for that, I've only given it a 5 for narrative character importance. But I did give it a 9 for enjoyment because, for obvious reasons. This is a hugely enjoyable song. People love it. Audiences and actors alike both really love this song. As one of my good friends, Rick Dupuy from SavoyNet, says, you know that Constance is a really great character because both of her songs are in the overture. And I think that is a good way of knowing like what songs Sullivan may be considered to be like the best or the most memorable songs from his operas, because those are the ones he put in the overture. A bit like Sun Whose Rays or Minerva, like he put those very, very heavily in the overture, so go to him. And from the Grand Duke, lest we forget, do you know who I am? I don't your countenance I can fix, my dear. I mean, what a banger. Like that is one of the best songs in the canon. But hopefully people are putting thought into it when they direct it. And especially in rehearsals as well, they're kind of making sure that the person playing Constance, and indeed the person playing the old man, feel safe and okay. Because this is asking quite a lot of actors to do this, especially in like the amateur universe, where people aren't trained in kind of, intimacy on stage. It's quite a difficult thing to ask someone to do, and I hope that people don't take that for granted and just assume that people will be okay with doing stuff. So watch out for this song. It's a great song, but needs to be dealt with responsibly. So number 6 on this list is When a Merry Maiden Marries from the Gondoliers. I almost called it Gungolungas because that's our nickname for it as we're doing it. I'm drinking tea out of a jug. So my aunt got me this, I think for my last birthday or maybe at Christmas. And I absolutely love it, but I never need a jug for anything. I have absolutely no use for a jug, so I just use it as a cup, and it's very nice. You might not have realised this, but I like cats. I know I've made that joke before. So, first of all, I actually think that I like this song more than most people do, and I think I find it funnier than most people do. When I directed this song in the summer, I really made a thing out of the fact that Tessa is being utterly ridiculous. And her language is so dramatic and colourful and vivid. Every flower is a rose, every goose becomes a swan. It's just insane. And I was to draw attention to that by just putting in some ridiculous choreography behind her. And I even had a very, very funny joke about every month being May. So, because I am generally hilarious. But I do think that people often treat this song as an afterthought, and I definitely don't do that. So even though it's ranked relatively low on this list, it's still got a 58 out of 80, so it still did really, really well for me. I gave it a 19 for music. I think the music in this is absolutely sublime. Things of yesterday, when you marry maiden, then here with love is laid on every flower is. It is just glorious, and I think that people maybe just don't listen to just how beautiful this song is. I think musically this is one of my favourite mezzo arias. In fact, this is my second favourite mezzo aria musically, and it's only kind of lost to the top one just by default. I'd say probably it is the prettiest, to be honest. So sweet and like joy-inducing musically, as it's meant to be. And the thing is, I don't mean by saying that Tessa is being ridiculous here to mean that I'm taking anything away from her joy and her happiness. It is possible to give the audience feelings of utter joy while also making them laugh at the same time. Like, those two things are not inconsistent with one another. I only gave it a 14 for lyrics. I do think the poetry is quite nice, but I don't get why Gilbert just repeated the verse. I mean, I guess that might have been Sullivan that did that, because I suppose that Gilbert just gives Sullivan the words and then Sullivan decides what to do with them. So maybe that was Sullivan's idea, in which case it was probably a good thing because musically it worked out really well, but I don't like the fact that it's just the same lyrics again. It does seem like a bit of an afterthought. When you get to the second verse and you realise these lyrics are pretty much the same, you're like, oh. And they're not even exactly the same, they're kind of ever so slightly different in places, and it just seems a bit lazy? I don't know, it's odd, and I don't believe that choice was made for dramatic reasons, because I can't think of a reason why that would have made the song better to repeat some words. So when I'm directing it, I do find a reason for it. The reason I gave to the person playing my Tessa was just that she's in that state where she is just so in love with this person that she cannot find any new words to use, but because she is so brimming over with joy, she has no choice but just to repeat those words again. So I guess it does kind of make sense with Tessa's character, but I don't know if Gilbert would have thought that deeply. I'm not giving Gilbert that much credit, and I doubt that was for dramatic reasons. And yeah, so that's why I gave a 14 for lyrics. I don't really particularly appreciate that. I also only gave it a 14 for emotional comedic sakes. This song is emotional, it's very joyful, and I do believe that Tessa is genuinely in love with Giuseppe, but just as I've been saying before, when it comes to the gondoliers, I just don't believe you ever really warm to any of these characters in the same way that you would warm to better formed characters in other operas. If you think about the relationship between Patience and Grosvenor in Act 2 of Patience and their dialogue, you really feel something for them there, but you don't know who Tessa, Giuseppe, Marco and Ginetta really are. They don't really have too many characteristics which make them vibrant characters. So it means that when it comes to seeing them in this state, you're just going to feel a bit less. I still gave it a 14. I didn't give it a terrible mark. And while I appreciate that this song does have comedic potential, I don't know if most people would see it that way, so I did give it a relatively low score there. Narrative / character importance, again, I did a 5 for that. You could cut this song out of the show and absolutely nothing would change. It's not detrimental to the show, it does slow it down. It slows down an act which is already very long. The thing is, I would never cut this song because I think it is one of the most beautiful songs in the show, in fact, but I do think that narratively, oh, we're almost at the end of the act here and it does feel like, oh God, really, another song? But I think it's worth it and I would never cut it. I actually am going to have to cut 1 or 2 songs when I do the show in Hever Castle just because of train times, which is a shame, but I will not cut this song. I gave it a 6 for enjoyment, and that's mostly me as an audience member. I've never played Tessa. I think I would have a lot of fun with this, but I'm just aware that I'm not a particularly usual sort of performer, so I'm just aware that most people who perform this song might not give it higher than that, so I gave it a 6 because I just feel most people probably wouldn't enjoy it as much as me. But let me know if what I've said about it has helped you like it a bit more. Or maybe I'm totally wrong that people find this song a bit dull to sing and maybe everyone really loves it. I just seem to get the impression that people tend to think this song is a bit boring, but I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I absolutely love it, and maybe I'm wrong in thinking that people think that, so do let me know. Number 5 I have given to a song that I've actually already discussed in a different list, but because I'm not absolutely certain exactly how I'm going to rank these songs at the end, I'm going to include songs like this, maybe in multiple categories, just to make sure I really have given it the correct score. So this song is When Maiden Loves, She Sits and Sighs from the YEOMEN of the Guard, which I already ranked as an opening, but I'm going to also rank it as an aria in its own right. And then when the time comes to rank them all together, I will decide which set of scores represents it in its best way. And I'll do that for every song that has that kind of issue. I gave this one a 16 out of 20 for music. I love the spinning motif in the orchestra, and I do think the vocal line is lovely. I don't think it's as mind-blowing as some of the arias in YEOMEN of the Guard or the other aria that this character has, but I do think that it is just lovely. And I also gave it a 17 out of 20 for lyrics and a 14 out of 20 for emotional comedic stakes. I do think that this song is very emotional because I think that it's lovely how the sighs are written into the music. 'Tis but a foolish sigh, ah me, born but to droop and die, ah me. It is really lovely, but just because you don't know this character very well yet, I think it's hard to give it any more points than that. I think most of its points will go to its lyrics and its music rather than anything dramatic or emotional. And it is odd to have this as an opening as well, so it's weird that usually we start off with a big comic number saying, these are the people that are going to be in this opera, but this time you start off with one woman talking about how she loves someone, and I think that's really special. And I do think that it is pretty emotional, but I can't really give it like more than a 14. I think for emotional / comedic, it's not really that funny. It's charming, it's endearing, but I don't think it's particularly funny. But you know, a 14 out of 20 is a pretty decent mark. I gave it a 6 out of 10 for narrative / character importance. I do think that it's like a relatively good opening to her character arc. Is it a good opening to the show itself? I don't know. Is the fact that she feels this way directly relevant to the story? I guess in a way, but it is odd to spend a whole song talking about this before anything else has even happened. Like, it is somewhat cloying, but I do really appreciate it. I played Phoebe and I really enjoyed opening the show. It's really nerve-wracking, actually, but you have a big job to do and you have to suddenly get across to the audience who you are. And I think this song does do that, which is why, you know, I gave it a 6, but I think that just suddenly bombarding the audience with a single person talking about another single person that we haven't met yet, I think it is a little bit difficult to absorb that, and it's not particularly meaningful. And I also gave it I gave it a 6 for enjoyment as well. I honestly don't believe this is a song that people particularly look forward to seeing in Yeoman. Usually, it's sung and it's over. That then the show you consider kind of properly beginning in Tower Waters. And this is coming from a person who I absolutely love Phoebe and her dialogue and everything she does. But I'd say that this initial song that she has, it is quite difficult to get across what you want to get across in it. And I think I managed that really well when I did it, and I've seen other people manage it really well as well, but I do think that Phoebe really gets going in the dialogue and in her future material, and this is maybe not a super comedic or emotional way of getting that across. It's kind of gently emotional and gently comedic, but it's not anything dramatic. It's not like a big moment for her. It's more of an internal... Well, it's either internal or she's telling the audience. It's probably a bit better if the person playing Phoebe really concentrates on letting the audience in here and it's not just all said to the ether. I think too many times I've just seen the song just said, to like a place in space rather than actually trying to engage the audience. I think that's the key with this song here. But I do love this one. I gave it a 59 out of 80. I think Phoebe is one of the best characters in the canon, and in fact, a lot of these Mezzo parts are just amazing. Number 4, I have given to a song which is only really very tenuously an aria, but I'm going to include everything I possibly can to get as many numbers on this list as possible. And this one is Away Nor Prosecute Your Quest from the MIKADO. So this appears in the Act 1 finale, and it's just after the alto comes on and gives her big dramatic aria, which I love, and then the mezzo comes forward and basically tells her, go away. I recently watched the 1966 production of the MIKADO, and it really affirmed for me how important it is to just think so deeply about these characters and how high the stakes are. I have been saying this whole time about the MIKADO how, the stakes are kind of quite frivolous in it. But you know what? I think I was totally wrong about that. I think that the stakes in the MIKADO, you can actually make them really, really high and just make all the characters really earnest. And with that in mind, the mezzo singing this song to the alto is actually an incredibly brave moment. This is so brave of her to come over and do this, because this is like a big, important, noble person who has suddenly come in. Like, she could do anything to these people. She could probably have them all executed. But yet, the mezzo comes over and is like, don't mess with my friend. Don't mess with my friend's happiness. And that is so cool. I absolutely love that. Away, no prosecute your quest. It's just such a good example of friendship. And also, it's just hilarious as well. I gave this a 16 out of 20 for music. I think it's relatively simplistic, but it's just so catchy that it kind of, that the kind of simplicity of it is actually a benefit to it rather than a downside. But I gave it an 18 out of 20 for lyrics. I think this is one of the most loved moments in the MIKADO. I can't sing it because it has a name in it and I don't want to say the name, but it is just such a it is such a beloved and catchy and joyful moment, and perfectly bridges that narrative gap between the alto's initial solo with chorus responses and their second solo, The Hour of Gladness. It's just the absolute perfect, like, joyful subversion of expectations. And I think that dramatically, this number works extremely well. I gave it an 18 for its emotional / comedic stakes. I think that this song is just so perfectly placed and is just so fearless and so fierce. It is just tremendously placed and so cleverly inserted into the dramatic arc of the Act 1 finale, which is something I'm also looking forward to talking about in a few videos' time. I gave it a 9 for its narrative / character importance. I don't think that the mezzo character who sings this is hugely narratively important, but this song does go a long way to showing us what kind of person she is, and it gives that actor something to really work with. And so that's the reason I appreciate this moment so much. I think it's a really good acting tool for the person playing that part to kind of then apply to the rest of the show. Like, oh, so the Mezzo, she's the kind of person that would stand up for her friend in this really high stakes situation with this very important person. So let me now go and think about how I can apply that energy to the rest of it. And as a result, the Mezzo in the MIKADO is always super fierce, and I love it. And also kind of a different kind of fierce to like the smaller Mezzo part as well. Like, they're both hilarious and fearless, but in really different ways. And I think that when people really get that difference between those two, I think it makes for a really good time with the Three Little Maids. They're all such great parts to play, honestly. I gave it an 8 for enjoyment as well. I have actually played this part. I played it in a concert, but we did the dialogue as well, so I count that as me having played the part, because I did do a full show of it, but there was no staging and we didn't have costumes, which is a good thing, I think, in this day and age. But I had a really, really good time. This was probably my second favourite bit of the show for her, apart from the scene where they're all being deferential to the MIKADO. Oh, I wasn't there, you know, that scene. And the criminal cry, that's such a great trio. But this is probably her best moment as an individual. It is just so out of nowhere and so fearless. I love this character. I love the MIKADO. Number 3 goes to another song from the Yeomen of the Guard, Were I Thy Bride. This gets 70 out of 80, and just like, the top 3 songs on this list must be 3 of the best songs in the canon, which is amazing, because it's amazing how there are only 8 arias for mezzos, and really, truly, there are actually only 4. And they're all so good. Why didn't Gilbert write more songs for the mezzo? Is that because he didn't have Jesse Bond? I think, and I'm going to answer that question myself, I think it's because he was going to have this mezzo to play Hebe in HMS Pinafore, but they ended up not being able to do it or something, and as a result of that, he made the part way smaller, because at that point, Jesse Bond, who he got to do it, he didn't know her that well, but then as he got to know Jesse Bond better, he gave her more stuff to do. And so the mezzo parts got better and better as it goes on, really. I mean, well, with the exception maybe of Utopia and the Grand Duke, where there are no mezzo characters. But yeah, the mezzos do, on the whole, just seem to get better as the canon goes on. So, but yeah, there should be more of these. Anyway, Were I Thy Bride, I gave this an 18 out of 20 for music. I love how every verse is a bit different. This is one of those songs where, as a performer, I'm kind of terrified of it, because I'm always worried I'm going to forget the words. Yet I never have, because I've sung this in performance once, and I've also sung this at concerts, and I'm always kind of worried, oh God, I'm going to forget the words, but they just seem to come out. I just seem to remember what they are, because the imagery that's being created is so vivid and wonderful that I find actually quite easy to remember. And I just love how it's both emotional and comedic, and lyrically it's almost perfect. I gave it a 19. The only reason I gave it a 19 is because I'm preserving my 20 for another one. But I do think that the lyrics in this are pretty much perfect. The poetry is beautiful. The silvery flute, the melancholy lute, were night owls hoot to my low whispered coo, were I thy bride. When I think about some of Gilbert's songs, and I think, oh, I probably could have written that. Like, this is one that, yeah, I couldn't have written this. This is way beyond my abilities as a lyric writer. But I don't know how he came up with such a beautiful song lyrically. It is just absolutely sublime. I gave it a 17 for emotional / comedic stakes. The thing is, even though this is meant to be purely a comic song, and there's certainly loads of action you can do with getting the keys back, and I had so much fun with this both when I was in it and when I directed it for Forbear a couple of years ago. It's a song that is kind of designed to have the focus pulled away from it, but at the same time it's also just very pretty and very emotional, and seems kind of ostensibly quite simple in the orchestra, but it's actually got loads of texture in it, which I really appreciate. It's just like it's a groove. It's such a fun little groove. I'm into it. But having said that, I actually think that it does have the capacity to be really emotional as well. Textually, it's not terribly important that Phoebe hates Wilfred. Like, the kind of things she's saying to Wilfred could totally just be her playing hard to get. Like, she doesn't need to actually be repulsed by this man. I think it's better if she's not, because it makes the ending really problematic. I mean, Sergeant Merron-Dankworth, this is a whole other kettle of fish, but I much prefer it when you feel like there is some fondness between Phoebe and Wilfred, even if that's not like strictly in the text. You can still totally make the text mean that, and it's completely sensical, and I just much prefer that. And so in this song, she can actually mean some of this. It can be playful, like she doesn't have to be disgusted by this person. It can be genuinely really flirty, and she's just like playing around with him, and actually maybe by the end, you know, she's actually quite enjoying, like, because she can have so much anxiety in this song, which really ups the stakes, because you can tell that she's really worried about being found out about stealing the keys, and that makes the stakes life and death. Like, if she was found out, she would be killed. So there is true anxiety in this song, but also I do happen to think that by the time the keys are back, she is starting to enjoy herself. And there's so much potential for emotional and comedic stuff in this song. So I gave it a 17. But I do appreciate it's maybe not as deep as some of the other songs in the canon, which is why I only got a 17. I gave it an 8 for its narrative character importance. I actually increased its mark, so now the whole song actually gets a 71 out of 80. I increased it from a 7 to an 8 because actually I do appreciate how much this can really do for Phoebe and Wilfred's relationship. I think it's a really important song to kind of show where they're at. And also narratively, yes, even though the lyrics of the song are not terribly important to the plot of the show, this song does play an extremely important narrative function, and that's a distraction for Wilfred so as to return the keys to him. So in that sense, even if the actual content of the song isn't narratively important, the fact that this song exists and is here is hugely narratively important. So I did give it an 8 for that reason. And it gets a 9 for enjoyment for me. I love watching this song. I love singing in this song. I love directing this song. I just really enjoy the existence of this song. Number 2, I have given to, from IOLANTHE, My Lord, a Suppliant at Your Feet. This song gets an 18 out of 20 for music. I think this is one of Will's very favourite songs in the canon. It is also one of mine. It gets a 72 out of 80 in total. But there's no way it's ever going to beat the one above it. So it goes here. And it gets an 18 out of 20 for lyrics. I think both the music and the lyrics are beautiful. They perform exactly the function they were meant to. This is just such a big moment in the opera. We were discussing, me and Will, the other week, about the Lord Chancellor, how important his character is, and how his and IOLANTHE's relationship is in some way the heart of the story. And that was definitely the case when I remember seeing Sasha Regan's all-male IOLANTHE many years ago now, and I definitely felt that that was the way that she saw it. That was definitely like the heart of the story, and this was the big moment of the opera, and it was just so utterly moving, and it's one of the most moving moments in the canon. What's particularly moving about it for me is that this isn't a song of defeat. This is not a person who is defeated. There is an element of I Built Upon a Rock, which I don't like. Even though I absolutely love I Built Upon a Rock, because she is defeated, it does read as maybe a little bit one note or a bit flat. Like, it is difficult to find colour in it because she is defeated. Whereas this song, it's easy to find colour in because she's not defeated yet. She actually thinks that this might work, but she also knows that in order for it to work, she is going to have to die. So I think when IOLANTHE is singing this song, she is doing so with this utter resolution that she is going to die. Or, I mean, she doesn't know for certain yet, because for all she knows, she might sing this song and the Lord Chancellor might say, okay, yes, but there's still a massive risk that she's going to be discovered here. So she does go into this thinking she might die, but she's also really happy to do it. And there's this resolution behind it, which I find so powerful, because this is a mother just giving up her life in order for her son to be happy. And that's a very sweet and very powerful thing. And what's interesting about it is that the first verse ends on "he dies," which sounds just so tragic. But then the second verse ends on "he loves." And it sounds so hopeful. And when she's asking the Lord Chancellor to recall his wife, that's not, I really don't believe that that is about her. She's not thinking about her. This is a completely selfless number. She is thinking purely about the power of her words and helping her son be happy. She doesn't want the Lord Chancellor to be sad. She's trying to kind of make him think about the relationship he had with her and how happy that made him, and just, recall that, just remember it. He loves. If in the bygone years thine eyes have ever shed tears, bitter, unavailing tears for one untimely dead, if in the eventide of life sad thoughts of her arise, then let the memory of thy wife plead for my boy. He dies. So she's so clever here, because she's finding a way of doing this from the grave. He dies are fondly laid aside in some old cabinet. Memorials of thy long dead bride lie, dearly treasured yet. Then let her hallowed bridal dress, her little dainty gloves, her withered flowers, her faded tress plead for my boy. He loves. It's so dark, but it's also so hopeful and so joyful. And I love to see an IOLANTHE who understands the joy of this song and who understands the power of it to take the Lord Chancellor to a place where he is recalling just how happy IOLANTHE made him, but in a way that also makes him very sad as well. It's one of those points where you kind of don't know whether you're going to smile or cry, and it's like everything, and it's just, oh God, it's just so emotional. It's very cathartic, and I don't like it when IOLANTHE comes on that's just very tragic. I don't like it when things are purely tragic. Like, it's important to always find the joy in something. And this is a good song to really look for any joy you can squeeze out of it, because their relationship would have been joyful. And if their relationship would have been joyful, then why not say so? I gave it an 18 for emotional comedic stakes. As I say, because it's not even slightly funny, 18 is the absolute maximum I can give it. But I did give it a 10 out of 10 for narrative/character importance. This is hugely important for both people on stage. It's also really important for the story. It's tying together all those storylines. It's clearing up the Phyllis and Strephon issue with her not being able to marry him until the Lord Chancellor says so. And it's also clearing up that loose end of her not actually dying after all those years ago, and the fact that she's still married to him. So it's clearing everything up, and we're about to get to the end game. I do think that IOLANTHE has one of the best and clearest endings of all of them, and the ending kind of starts here. This is where things are going to get wrapped up. So it's not only emotional, it's also really dramatic. It also has everyone on the edges of their seats thinking, oh God, he's going to find out what's going to happen to her. Like, she might actually die here. And the thing is, we don't know as an audience that she's not going to be killed. Like, this might end with her dying. I mean, there is a universe where IOLANTHE has actually quite a sad ending. And I wouldn't even hate that much. I wouldn't have hated it if that had been what had happened. It could have been that this ends with IOLANTHE and the Lord Chancellor having one final moment together, before she has to die. And that could have been lovely. And I'm not saying that would have been better than what actually happened, but you know, it's important to go into this number with the energy that might be what happens. Like, we don't know. And as far as dramatic stakes are concerned, I mean, this just scores extremely highly. This is extremely emotional, very dramatic. I also gave it an 8 out of 10 for enjoyment. I didn't give it like the full 10s. I think there are other numbers that are a bit more vibrant than this one, but I still gave it an 8, which gives it a final score of 72 out of 80. So, this is the first song I have come across in this entire series where I couldn't take away a single point from it. And that song is Cheerily Carols the Lark from RUDDIGORE. For a start, that recit and the aria itself is absolutely perfect musically. Not only is it a very pretty song, but it's extremely good at getting across the emotion at what the character is feeling, and it's very good at telling us what is in that character's head. And that's why it's so important as an actor to listen to all those little musical bits and make them mean something. Because Sullivan doesn't just like randomly write music by mistake. Every single scrap of music that Sullivan has written, he put there for a reason. And there is not a song anywhere else in the canon that gives the actor so much information about what is inside a person's head as this one. This is one of the most powerful introspective songs there is in the canon. Cheerily carols the lark over the cot, merrily whistles the clerk, scratching a blot, but the lark and the clerk, I remark, comfort me not. I have such trouble when there's lots of noise around me. And I wonder if Sullivan had something similar. I know that like a lot of musical people suffer from misophonia, which is something I have, which is where we kind of hate certain sounds and that feeling of like a sound just kind of grating. It's like people do compare it to nails on a chalkboard, but for me it's these noises, especially people eating, evoke this kind of fight-flight response, and there's nothing I can do about it. And so if someone's eating with their mouth open near me, I just have to literally run away. Because it's not like I think it's rude or it sounds gross. It's like if there's a sound in my ear, I kind of freak out. And so I get that. Those little diddling, but the la da 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 and the clock. To me, I just get that it's like her brain is full of noises that she can't turn off. And the world is just full of noises and sounds and colours that she just can't bear. The world is too much for her. There is too much inside her head. And why, who am I? Daft Madge, Crazy Meg, Mad Margaret, poor Beg, she's saying, this is how people view me. The thing is, she's actually one of the sanest characters in the whole thing because she really understands herself. This is like the most self-aware character in the canon. And this aria just is so perfect at doing that. Mad, yes, very, but why, Miss Teddy, don't go. Why is this character mad? What is up with this character? What's going on? And then she tells you what is a secret. Actually, just a bit lonely. That's all it is. No, that's all. Nothing particularly special. Nothing particularly special about me. I'm just lonely. I'm just sad. And then she tells us a parable. There's somebody that she loves who she's just desperate to notice her. And she sees that, often people will go after these really conventional, like pretty girls. And she thinks, no, you know what? This one's going to be different. And she remarks about how, she's just sitting there. In a nest of weeds and nettles lay a violet, half hidden, hoping that his glance unbidden yet might fall upon her petals. She's so confident and independent, yet she's just bursting with hope. She's desperate for somebody to see her, for somebody to notice her and say, like, validate me, you know? But no, he just picked someone else. What's really interesting about this song and how I connect with it, I've been part of the GNS community since I was 18. So about 18 and a half years I've been part of the GNS community. And especially over the last 8-9 years, I have been pouring my love and a lot of money into bringing these works to people in a way that I consider to be fresh, but also very much in keeping with exactly what Gilbert wanted. I respect this material so much, and I cast other people that respect it so much, but yet I'm not the kind of person who's very good at networking, and I think I freak people out sometimes. And I do have moments where I can't cope and I get upset and I'm very sensitive. After all the work I'd done, you know, I'm sitting here like waiting in this garden for someone to pick me. And that's how this song resonates with me. It's a song that I feel represents not only very literal feelings for me, in that I have been heartbroken many a time in my life, but it also represents for me my journey as a GNS performer / director, and how difficult it is just in the acting industry, just feeling let down again and again and again, like you're just banging your head against a brick wall, just like trying to get seen, trying to get noticed. It's something that is very special to me for that reason, and I hope that you all feel the same way about that song. Actually, the very happy thing that we can all take away from this is that I'm actually playing Mad Margaret in the summer for Savoynet, which is something I'm incredibly grateful to have the opportunity for. I've been trying to play Mad Margaret for 20 years. And finally I get the chance to. So I get to play Mad Margaret in the summer, so please do come and see me or watch it on GS Opera TV when it does come out. But that is something I'm really, really looking forward to. And also, there are tickets now available for the Grosvenor Light Opera Company performance of The Grand Duke. So if you want to come and see me as Lisa and some other people who are also amazing, you get to see my really good friend Emma Retty, who is going to play Tessa for me in the Gondoliers in a month. She is playing the Baroness, and what's so awesome is that she was in the very first production I ever directed, which was also the Grand Duke at St Andrews, where she played Lisa, and she's now playing the Baroness. So that should be worth a watch, and it's just got an absolutely amazing cast, and it's just we're having such a good time. So please do come along and see that. Thank you so much for your support with these videos. Please subscribe. I'll wait. There we go. You see, that wasn't so hard, was it? And it gave me a little dopamine hit to see that in my emails, like so-and-so has subscribed. Oh, every time that happens, I feel so good. Please tell me in the comments if you think I'm wrong. As I say, these lists are not final. I can totally change the rankings of these if I get enough opinions. So, oh God, you were so wrong. And oh yeah, I Am So Proud is the best trio. It definitely is. I rewatched the MIKADO, I'm like, yeah, it is. It's so good. But having said that, I love you all very much. And I will see you for the next one.